All right, well, welcome everybody to the October 17th, 2024 edition of the Technical Advisory Council of the Confidential Computing Consortium. Everybody is welcome to participate in the call and contribute constructively in a few slides. If you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself, you'll be invited to do that. Try to be as friendly and engaging as possible, so please don't be shy about that when the slide rolls around. Because we have a lot of companies here with a lot of different brands, all of them good, we also abide by the antitrust policy from the Linux Foundation, and you can see that on linuxfoundation.org/antitrust-policy. Today, we've got some announcements about different activities that are coming up with conferences and so forth. And then in the heart of the agenda, we've got an update from the brand repositioning working group. And then we want to talk about our budget for 2025. And then now is a good time for me to check and see if Nathaniel is on. Do not see Nathaniel. So we probably will not do the plumbers conference recap. Originally, that was going to be David Kaplan, but he has handed off his role to Nathaniel, and I don't know whether or not Nathaniel was actually at LPC.
In Vienna, I think I didn't see him. Doesn't mean he wasn't there, but I was in Vienna. I wasn't at plumbers, but I didn't see him around at all. So I suspect.
Yeah. So I think David said he was giving him a verbal download, but
right.
Might not have had time to come around to that. So we will probably skip that and have a shorter meeting, and then kind of looking out for the rest of the year here. We want to wrap up any open items that we have that we committed to do. So we'll check in with everybody on their key results that they're working on next week. And then we'll also start planning for what it is we want to, what topic areas we want to cover in 2025. Anything else people were expecting for the agenda today? Nope. Okay. So we will fly past roll call, except maybe acknowledging Paul coming in for ARM in replacement for Nathaniel. So welcome once again, Paul.
Thank you.
And now is a good time. If you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself to the others here, you're welcome to pop off of mute and let us know where you're coming from, how you like to be addressed, and what your interest in confidential computing is.
Well, I guess I could go now, right? Having just been kindly welcomed.
That would be great, Paul.
Yeah. So apologies for the almost biblical glare behind me. That's the sun has just moved into that gap in between the blinds. So yes, I am now here representing ARM. It's not my first time in the TAC meetings. I've been in some of the previous ones. I'm a solutions architect. I'm based in the UK, and my role at ARM is partly to do with ecosystem preparedness for the confidential computing technology, where ARM, of course, has a confidential computing architecture. So that's my interest, and that's why I'm here.
Fantastic. Great to have you once again, Paul.
Thank you.
Morning. This is Raj Pal from U.S. government. I guess pronouns he, him, his. So my main interest in CCC is just to learn more about it. Over here, we are taking a dive into understanding the security, aspects of these different cloud-based processors. I'm actually looking into ARM, reading through all the documents and the architecture. I've attended several of these meetings and very interesting discussions. I think there was one topic that was brought up a few sessions ago, the TCB versus trust chain. That was interesting. I don't know if there was any further conversations, maybe through the email chain or the email threads, but yeah, that was interesting to area.
There
that
wasn't
didn't talk
much
about.
follow up. Good to have you here. Are you able to say which part of the US government you're from? If you're not, that's also fine.
Just DoD, Department of
Cool.
Defense within
Yep.
the U.S. government. All right, thank you. Looking forward
you.
to more discussions. Over.
Yeah, great having you on. And yeah, like Mike said, there wasn't much discussion following that, so we have to figure out, I think, how to frame the problem in a way that people can respond better. A lot of times when we have kind of some open-ended questions, it can be hard to get the right kind of discussion moving forward. So I think we'll come back and look at that some more. Other things that you might be interested in for Roger or for anybody who's not been here as often, we do have all of the tech talks. So Rian will go through the recordings of these meetings after the fact, and if we have a tech talk that session, he'll cut that out, and then it's posted in the YouTube playlist for the TAC. And maybe somebody can fish out the link for the YouTube playlist, but otherwise, if you just look for Confidential Computing Consortium on YouTube, we've got playlists for the different working groups and for our tech talks.
No, that sounds great. I'll check that out.
Great.
And if you want to have deeper discussions about anything, including the work of the CCC and how DoD could be involved, I'm very happy to have a chat as well. I'm Mike Bassell. I'm the executive director. So
Wonderful. Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else out there who would like to introduce themselves? All right, well, always feel free to pop off of mute and jump into the conversation. If you weren't here last time, what we did is we did have one of those tech talks about storage and how NVMe can or should be integrated with confidential computing. So some open questions there, an opportunity to collaborate with the TCG storage working group. And then we also had a second tech talk from Caroline at Microsoft talking about a new project, OpenHCL. I think Caroline gave a talk at Linux Plumbers on that. And I think some of us are hopeful and anticipating that we might see that in open source in the near future. And then we had that discussion about attestation terminology, which kind of centered on those chains of trust that we were just talking about. And now headed into announcements. Who would like to talk us through the KubeCon content?
This all real quick. And Paul, welcome on. I owe you one email on this topic, but I think I've gotten a hold of everyone else. So we have full booth coverage. Thank you to everyone who's been a part of that. And I will walk real quickly through the quick assets that we'll be handing off. Because what I've done is try to collect all of the CCC content and insert more content from our members if it's missing, and I think it's essential to understanding. So if we go to just the next slide real quick. This is the list of all of the workshops, talks, and the additional content support that we're providing. A couple of things that are cool to note here. We've got a workshop from Microsoft. NVIDIA has a really, really cool talk. These are what I've highlighted. If, especially on this call, if there's a talk or session that I have missed that you think is critical to our audience, you have about 7 days to let me know before I send this to print. But I thought that you would probably want to see this list of talks because you're going to have them on your list. Jump to the next page real quick. So we're going to have a 2-page document. I'm trying to do 2 separate lead captures. The first one is the people who are serious about CC, who either have it as a byline or as a potential byline. I need them to hit every single aspect of technical content that we can provide them. On the second slide, these are people who are getting familiar with the concepts of confidential computing and who probably are not in a purchasing position. I want to get them coverage, and then I want to send them away with resources. So there is one page that we are orienting towards more cube crawl, where we're focusing much more so on getting them online resources that we can tag and see which at KubeCon get the most response. Are they going first to our OS projects, our membership benefits, our use case, or our SIGs? Seeing that distribution is going to be useful. So the next slide there, just to give you a look and feel of it, this should be pretty easy for people to follow through. And on the first page, when we link to KubeCon updates, you can see an editable version of this if you want to go through and just confirm. But today, after about 1 p.m. PST time, I'm having a final meeting to clarify everything with KubeCon with internal team, and I will be reaching out to everyone externally. There are a few things that I think we can add value to around content from OS projects. But again, one more email. This is pretty much done. We have KubeCon almost ready to go. We are just about 5 weeks out.
That's great. I can tell it was a lot of work to get all this together, but it looks like a great way to get people oriented to find what they might want to find about confidential computing at KubeCon. Okay, any questions from anybody about KubeCon?
Love to know who else is going, or who here is going to be going, and or if their companies are going, even if they're not. I will be going. Sal will be going, of course, and we know that the people that Sal has listed will be there. But is anyone else who we can get up and maybe get together for a beverage or some food or whatever? Really.
What is the conference and where is it?
KubeCon North America. It is in Salt Lake City in about a month's time.
Okay. Haven't heard of it yet.
KubeCon is one of the big ones. It's around Kubernetes. It's run by the CNCF, which is part of Linux Foundation. I'm sure we can find you details. In fact, I'll find details and put them in the chat if someone hasn't already done that. I'll do that.
Okay.
Yep, it's about container orchestration, and there's about 7 million projects to do that. And so that conference is quite large.
Sal beat me to it. Only 7 million. I thought we had to.
Oh my God.
It's not quite that bad, but it does feel like that sometimes.
Yeah, it's almost 200 projects. They're only 1-2 magnitudes larger than CCC. Now.
Nice.
For now.
For now. Good point.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, this is Jason from Invariant. We'll be there. Looking forward to
Excellent.
seeing everybody. I think Aaron and I are both also helping with the booth, so we'll definitely be around.
Definitely catch up with you. That's really good to hear. Thank you.
Great. Okay, Rian, do you want to take this one?
I will take this, and I will also be at KubeCon and at the booth, so I'll see you all there. Announcement about the TAC committee election. We will send out the nomination request properly the week after the governing board meeting, which is next week. So Dan has been doing an excellent job of being the chair of this committee, but it's a lot of work being the sole leader of the committee. So what we will be doing in this next upcoming election cycle is, like the outreach committee, we will also have a co-chair elected, which will help carry the burden. If you have any doubts about responsibilities or you're interested, speak to Mike, speak to Dan or myself. It really gives you a foot in the door to be able to lead the discussion and to help guide the work of the TAC, which is very important.
Absolutely. This is really, really important stuff. Dan is, I believe, planning to stand again. Is that correct, Dan?
That is correct.
And people who wish to stand can stand for the chair and or the vice chair. So you can stand for either or both. And we encourage conversation and discussion. And when I'm sure that Rian will give information, but basically we like to have a paragraph or two, short paragraph or two about where you're coming from, what things you think are important, and how it fits together, and how you'll help further the aims of the CCC through the TAC. So we welcome people to stand, and you can nominate yourself, or you can be nominated by somebody else, I believe. You do need to be a member of the CCC to be, well, your company needs to be a member of the CCC in order for you to stand. But other than that, or organization. Yeah.
The invitation to nominate and to be involved in the process will go out through the TAC mailing list. So if you're not on the TAC mailing list, also reach out to me on Slack or on email, and I can add you to the mailing list so you don't miss out on anything. That's all.
And please tell your colleagues, or if you attend yourself, about we're doing the same in the outreach committees. So if that's an important function of the CCC as well.
Okay, great. Coming up, what might seem like the distant future out in February, but these things come along quick when people kind of disappear for the holidays, is FOSDEM. So if you're not familiar with that, that's a big open source conference that's really focused on developers and developing, sort of less so on products and positioning. Typically, we have had a confidential computing room there, which I have never personally been able to join. But because several people are there, it would be convenient to have a face-to-face, or it could be. There was interest for that during the Attestation SIG meeting a week or two ago. And the question came up, well, what about the TAC? So I don't know if people happen to know off the top of their head if they're planning on being at FOSDEM in the coming year, but we could have just maybe a short exchange about that, and then that can feed into what we talk about for budget coming up. Yeah, so maybe just feel free to drop in a chat if you plan to be there, just like Mike did. And then we won't have to hover on this slide too long, but it would be nice to get together face to face as a TAC. I don't think we have really done that, other than maybe in the very, very early stages of the CCC when everything was getting ramped. We'll have another opportunity to do that maybe around the CC Summit, depending on how the planning for that rolls out, and then also, I guess, opportunities at the open source summits that are facilitated by the Linux Foundation. We haven't really made use of those as a TAC yet either. And with that, I think we can hear from the brand repositioning working group. So this is the group that's been thinking about how do we put use cases forward instead of just security tech, so that people better understand how to make use of confidential computing. Who do we have from the working group today?
I do not see either App or Rachel, maybe that couldn't make it, but they did ask us to just announce that they have got to the point where they have a framework document available, which is on the link, where they are discussing the work that have been doing around the brand and about the positioning of the brand, the CCC brand in the market, and use cases that they want to discuss and put forward as not the only, but at the moment, the primary use cases, and they would also welcome to expand later into other use cases. So please look at the document, review, comment, and they will be more than happy to accommodate all discussions. And if you have very specific topics you want to discuss, also join the meetings and participate. Out of yesterday's outreach meeting, there was actually participants that realized that there's things that cross-section with the business that they're doing. So please read and participate.
Yeah, and I haven't looked through this in detail myself, but it looks pretty tractable to get through it. It doesn't look like a ton of stuff to review. So I think they'll find it helpful, and we should all collectively find it helpful to make sure that things are correctly listed here. So I'm dropping that link into chat. I assume.
And the link will presumably be in the minutes email as well.
Yes, I will add the link and the request to review also to the minutes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I do want to highlight one thing. So I saw
Mhm.
this document for the first time about a week and a half ago. It's already been incredibly useful for me, and it will be useful for anyone, particularly if you're providing content or blogs. This just helps us to make sure, because we're getting content and communication from so many different organizations, that single core truth document helps us to make sure that everything that we send out is of the same tone and it's already working. So do take a look at that, make sure that you're comfortable with it because it's going to supercharge our content.
Sounds
All
good.
right. Okay, so now we can get into, I think the main topic for today is the budget. Let me provide maybe a little bit of context. The CCC as a whole had been managing to squirrel away extra funds each year for the first few years that we were underway, and we decided about a year ago that that was not really helping us having money in the bank. So we've started to spend it faster than we're bringing it in. And so with this deficit spending, that can't go on indefinitely. And so this year we want to try to pare back a little bit from the aggressive amount that we have been spending collectively at the CCC. Now, most of that budget ends up going to, say, conference activities and things that are in the outreach budget. Some of the headcounts that we need in order to be in order to function as a consortium. We have a relatively small section of that budget for the TAC, and the goal with this money that we are allocated is primarily to facilitate the projects. We have goals for the TAC that are around projects, ecosystem engagement, so that's reaching out to other groups like maybe the TCG or IETF, government organizations. So we've responded to RFCs from different agencies. And then the last of the three categories is community building. So what do we do to make sure that we're bringing in as many and diverse of people as we can? Small amounts of money are great for when there are bits of friction that we could help get people over. So one of the main things there for projects would be if they need test infrastructure, because we need specific hardware for confidential computing. So we've allocated money for that. We also wanted to make sure that, particularly for developers of our projects who don't have large company backing, that they have an ability to go and promote their project at development conferences. And so we have a bit of travel budget set aside for them to be able to get them to meaningful conferences. And then there's this bucket here for consortium IT services and tools. Nobody's tended to use that, and I can't recall off the top of my head what some of those tools are. License scanning is something that is
that's one of the ones. License scanning is quite a big one, right, Dan?
Mm-hmm. So there's different kinds of things that maybe you would incorporate into your CI infrastructure or things like that. But anyway, this is how we have allocated money in the past. And so Rian and I have worked together to propose a budget as a starting place, but we definitely want input from everybody. So one of those places of input is what kind of things aren't we doing so far for projects that we could be doing? Things that are sort of outside of the realm of possibility are hiring developers, because then you start getting into tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that in a scalable way, and that's not something we have budget for. But if there are things like test infrastructure that would alleviate some problems for developers, maybe there is some sort of contract labor that could come in on a short-term basis for some specialized skill. Anything like that comes to mind, it would be good to have a little brainstorming session on that.
Yeah, the sort of thing that springs to mind would be if you need particular GitHub actions to be set up, and some consultancy around that sort of thing might be contract work might be sensible, I guess. That sort of thing you're thinking of?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great example. So we don't have anybody on our project who is familiar with GitHub Actions. If we could hire a consultant to come in and teach us how to do that, so that we can do the fishing, so to speak, from there on out, that would be a fun idea.
Yeah, and one of the suggestions I sent to you in the email today, I apologize, I didn't copy the list on it, was, and I'm just looking at the budget for the test infrastructure. It seems to me like having a lab that can be shared by the members and then by researchers would be good. So a semi-permanent but mutable setup, in a way to kind of showcase the principles of confidential computing. So it can be used as demonstrations, but it could also be used for testing. But having it be a thing that exists more than ephemerally, from time to time, I think would be beneficial.
We talked about this a while ago, and I just update you on what the thinking was then. Not to say it's necessarily the same. We ran into problems with that because the setup needed by the different sets of projects and startups and members and stuff was really very different across the different needs, in terms of whether you want which hardware you want, for instance, then again how it's set up and all of the infrastructure around it, and finding a way that worked we struggled with. Again, not to say it couldn't be done.
Yeah, I find your problem interesting. Sorry, Dan, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was just going to say, just in the spirit of brainstorming, it's really good. It's really easy to come up with ways to say that something won't work. But I'm very much in the space right now of, let's just get some ideas on the table and we can pair them back as needed.
Yeah, that makes sense. To push back. So I was just giving some background. I'd love to explore how we might make it work.
Yeah, I love those problems too, by the way. I think if those problems exist, that's something that the CCC should look at. And we should be like, Now, some of those are true, right? Like we need different pieces of hardware, but some of the others, we should be looking at how we're making it easier for users of confidential computing to do some of these things. So
you are not wrong.
One quick note here. I mean, I don't want to diverge us from that conversation. Is a bigger discussion, but sitting right in the center of the screen is also our mentorship program, which I was going to highlight when we were saying if you need extra help with these projects. This is going to be for lower lifts than what we were just discussing. But a great example is Isla is going to be submitting probably this week their scope for a project. They very simply need help setting up linters, SCA analysis on their project. That's a great scope. And there's good ways to bring people in when there's things, there's big lifts and small lifts as well. And we can still get those done for 2024 if you submit those to me.
Thanks for making the plug for the mentorship program. It's something that we've had for a long time that we have made inconsistent use of. And it requires project maintainers to pop their head up for a little bit and think about how somebody could help. And then we can do some of the work to recruit that person in. But it does require a little bit of upfront effort and some ongoing interaction with the maintainer so that mentee gets coached. I wanted to put maybe Fritz on the spot, who's not here, to talk about university interaction. That's another thing that came up earlier this year, sort of like what Jason just mentioned about having lab space. Is can we provide hardware to universities in a way that helps them make more productive research? I could also maybe put Jörg on the spot to talk about what it's been like so far as a new project in the CCC and maybe reflect on anything that would be helpful for assistance, but only if you've got some thoughts, Jörg, so don't feel obligated to pop off of mute. And then anybody else as well who might have sort of similar experience or has been helping out with a project.
Yeah, maybe can I, sorry, Jens here from FrontierX. We do some program where we help students at NYU with a couple of things. It's mostly in the accounting arm there. So students that are in that direction, and they're super interested in this, and we are planning to do something. Can I maybe get in touch on this topic afterwards, because I'm pretty sure NYU would be a very good one to do this with.
Yeah, reach out to me. I'll send my email in the Slack. But Fritz and I have been discussing this across the year, and yes, I'd love to bring educational resources together and share them.
Cool. We'll be in touch. Thank you, Sal.
Right. Well, I'm gonna keep thinking about the different things that we are doing for the projects, more things that we could do for them. I'm gonna drop this link in the chat so people can bring that up on their own screens. I'm gonna flip back to the budget that we've proposed so far. So that last screen showed the 2024 view, and here we have what we budgeted, what we've actually spent to date, with the forecast for the remainder of the year, and then the resulting delta on that, and then what we're proposing for 2025. So this TCA travel we didn't talk about. That's for the technical community architect to be able to go to conferences on our behalf. So everything that Sal was doing for KubeCon, for example, that Sal just spoke about. We allocated, I'm not quite sure why we allocated quite that much money for it, but it seems well in excess of what we need. So just want to pare that back closer to actuals. And then for project travel, want to keep that, we're proposing to keep that about where we're at, with the idea that it's maybe not so much about the facilitating the project maintainers exclusively, but maybe we could also use some of this money to get together for face-to-face meetings for the TAC or the SIG chairs when we have some other events that we could co-locate with. So not spending more, not spending less, but maybe trying to find different ways to make use of that money. Test infrastructure, just doing a little haircut on that to bring it closer to actuals, but we don't want to feel like we don't want the projects to feel like they're constrained. Since nobody's been using this consortium IT services and tools, we just cut that. And then again, just sliding back the mentorship closer to actuals. I would like that our intent is that we don't feel constrained by that budget amount. That it usually has not been the issue that there's not enough money. It's been the issue that there's not enough available maintainers to spend time coaching mentees. So I would like us to be able to, however many applications we get for that, we can always go back to the board and ask for some more money, but we don't need to try to hold some off to the side that won't be used.
So one question from here, this is Nicholas speaking, regarding that consortium IT and the point previously with making hardware or some basically test example available. Would that fall under that? If we now would say basically as a confidential computing consortium, we provide a minimal environment for people to go through independent of technologies and basically see the value of it? Or would that be that test infrastructure part? I'm just curious whether we should really cut it to zero or think about how we could use that to provide such a environment which people could leverage or use initial free of charge, basically, to promote the.
Yeah, really good question. So this services and tools, that was a specific list of things that the Linux Foundation provided. And I can't speak in detail to what they are because nobody's used them, so I've forgotten now what they were. But I think if we wanted to provide a lab environment then we could create an entirely new bucket or just use out of this test infrastructure bucket. I'm hearing enough interest in that idea that it might be good to do a little exercise to figure out what that would cost. And then we can build that in as a specific item. What do people think about that?
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think there's opportunities to engage with the different projects and say, look, what's the minimum viable set of infrastructure that would allow you to do, and see what the overlaps there look like.
Right. And I was just wondering, rather than adding a new item, whether we could just make that test infrastructure being more that test and community infrastructure or something like that, so that as we progress and put something on that budget, nobody's questioning it, because test infrastructure sounds very restricted in my opinion.
Sure. So particularly for TAC voting members, I'd like to hear if you have thoughts, disagreements, you want to open some discussion in a later meeting. So maybe I'll just kind of run down the list here. Now I'm gonna go in random order. Catherine, from your perspective, I know this is your first 6 months maybe on the TAC, but any thoughts on these budget items?
Yeah, this is my first time seeing this budget, and I was gonna ask about these different, travel categories. But I think the proposed 2025 budget seems very reasonable to me, taking into account the historic kind of spending. I like the idea of travel for the TAC members to have face-to-face meetings. I think it would be good to get together maybe once a year. Maybe can co-locate that with the conference somewhere. Would be nice.
Okay, great. And then actually, now that I'm thinking too about different kinds of test infrastructure. Well, first let me answer the travel question. So again, the first line is separate to cover the technical community architect role. So that's Sal's travel budget to go out and go to conferences, whereas the second travel item was to fund maintainers of CCC projects to be able to go to conferences. So hopefully that clears up that question.
Yeah, thank you.
Now for test infrastructure, thinking of Google Cloud, for example, or Azure, I know that sometimes cloud providers offer cloud credits for different programs. So that might be another way that we could achieve this. And I don't know if it would mean the CCC would potentially pay for credits, or that as CCC member companies, any of our CSP members here would donate credits. But that's just kind of something to consider, and maybe we could talk about that next session, unless you have some immediate reaction to that.
Yeah, certainly that can be another way to support the project. But I think our issue here is not enough participation in this. I think we're not spending money in this category. I think it's easy enough, like since you're billed by the cloud if you run things on the cloud, and it just take that invoice and get reimbursed would be easier, I think, in process wise. Then kind of go through a different way of funding this. That's kind of my gut feeling about this.
Okay, thanks.
Some feedback
Manu?
on cloud credits. Sorry, Manu, did I jump the queue now?
Go ahead.
Okay, some feedback on cloud credits. So the Linux Foundation have two methods mainly that they help through the organization to support infrastructure. The one is through direct funding like we have here, where you set up the infrastructure and you ask for reimbursement based on the agreed amount. And then the other is cloud credits, where we can actually process credit providers or the cloud providers to give us credit. So if there's a really big need for specific implementations, we can actually reach out and try and get some cloud credits for that.
Okay, thank you, Manu.
Yeah, it's not directly related to money, but it's the intersection of what the TAC could be doing, and because we're brainstorming, right, the CSPs and the money thing. There's one thing we just ran into us as a startup, is that we're trying to do things with TDX in particular, but could be with SCV and other things. And there's we are in the Azure cloud. But we just don't, there's just no easy way for us to actually get to the low level capabilities of the machines in the CSPs. And so I'm wondering if this could be a forum where there's, we work with the CSPs, with Google and with Microsoft and maybe others to try to get to a place where companies that are interested in confidential computing can actually get raw capabilities in some sort of way. So I don't know if money helps in that case or something, but I just wanted to put that thought out there.
So you're talking about bare metal access rather than so you can actually talk to the chips yourselves, right, via syscalls and stuff.
Yeah, and it goes
we had
a little
problems
bit
with that when we were doing this previously. I understand.
Yeah, and it goes a little bit to the discussion we had, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. I forgot, I'm losing track of time, but where we're trying to get to the essence of confidential computing and do the best we can with the current chips and next generation of chips. So I'm just wondering if the TAC could be a facilitator in some way to make those things happen in an easier way.
Clarifying question, Manu. This isn't something that the cloud service providers have on their roadmap. It's not something that you anticipate them providing as a service. This is something that's going to require that you have physical access to the machines, or at least unrestricted access to the machines, maybe in ways that a cloud service provider wouldn't be able to grant. Do I have that right? Am I couching it right?
Yeah, and again, I'm just using that example because it was a specific case that we have right now. But I don't want to pinhole this, or just being this the case of the discussion here. But yes, in this case, is that the attestation capabilities, right, offered by the Azure cloud do not give us access to some of the TDX, the bare bones stuff that TDX enables. There's a layer there that we cannot go through, and I can, my CTO could say more about this. But that's the kind of thing. I'm wondering if the TAC could be a facilitator in those kinds of discussions when companies come with specific things. We can take that offline also, Alec.
I kind of want to dig in just a teeny bit longer. Do you want, and I won't take long, do you want the CCC to intervene with cloud service providers, or member cloud service providers work with you directly to make more capabilities present in public clouds? Or do you want the CCC to simply bypass public clouds altogether and make available some pool of hardware that you have direct access to without the kind of infrastructure control plane restrictions that cloud service providers interpose?
Well, in fact, this is the kind of discussion that I think is very interesting for the CCC and the TAC in particular, to see if this is something we want to do. Because in fact, the next step, when we couldn't do what we wanted to do on the Azure cloud, we actually went to Intel, and then we got the Intel developer cloud, and we have access now to a machine in a developer mode. But even there, the machine is configured in a certain way where we can't play with the OS, for instance, and we still don't have exactly the access that we want. So maybe indeed a part of the test infrastructure thing is something that can, I don't know how, but something that could be worked out, where we would make the latest and greatest and most advanced CC technologies available to companies that are part of this organization, so that we could indeed somehow enable the low-level development activities that our members are more likely to tackle first, compared to other companies who would use the off-the-shelf available offering of CSPs.
Well, let's
just a comment from my side as we work within IBM Cloud, right? I mean, there is a consideration that the site reliable engineers and the security of the data centers in production are very restricted. So it is on purpose that you cannot have that generic access. And on the development side, it is always that point with the NDA on how to expose to be technologies to customers. So, but I think it's a very valid point where, as I said before, with these test and lab, it might be something to have dedicated test clouds where these kind of measures don't have to be applied, because it is under the umbrella of the Confidential Computing Consortium.
Catherine?
You're talking into a dead mic.
Okay, yeah, I think this is a great discussion. So I sense that this is not just access to hardware. I feel this is more of like a partnership of jointly develop something that is like a future product. So to me, I feel like maybe maybe CCC can facilitate in forming that kind of a partnership to help companies to develop innovative technologies that cannot be just be developed on their own. So it needs to be a partnership with the cloud provider.
So yeah, I can't quite tell. Sorry, I can't quite tell if what I was hearing was a request for infrastructure as a service that you might get with, I don't know, IBM Cloud or any of the other cloud providers where you have almost bare access to the hardware. There's still some sort of infrastructure control, but you're not provided with only virtual machines.
So let me reflect on this. Having been there, done this when working with NARCs and Profion, the first thing I'd say to Manu is that getting access to those is, as you say, very difficult, but it's quite a lot easier if you're doing it via an open source project, which is part of the CCC, because the CCC is set up more easily to provide capabilities to those rather than private members. Although as a startup, I realize there's a toss up there. But to the larger point, the broader point about access to primitives, and I'm going to put it like that, this is a security issue, and it's something we should care about a lot. I understand Nicholas's point about not giving access to low level for everything, and that's quite right. But if you cannot have full access to attestation, if you can only get a TDX VM with the CSP's UEFI or BIOS in it, that is a security problem. We need to have access to companies who are innovating, who have direct access to the capabilities that CC provides and the chips provide to them, rather than it always being mediated by the CSPs. And I understand why the CSPs want to do this, but it will absolutely be stifling innovation if we don't allow people access directly to that. And it's great that Intel provides labs to do this, but if the CSPs will only provide a confidential VM in their way, rather than allowing startups and larger companies to directly make use of the capabilities that confidential computing provides via TEs and attestation, then we are failing the community, because it is not opening up the full capabilities of confidential computing. And we will run into problems with that. And I think this is something that AMD and Intel and ARM and IBM themselves and NVIDIA must be pushing that CSPs make the stuff available. Not to everybody, I get that, but we need to make it easier. And if the CCC needs to get up on a soapbox and talk about this, I'm very happy to do that. I see that as part of my role. So I'll climb down off my soapbox and chill a bit, but that's my view.
I still am not 100% clear if infrastructure as a service isn't already a solution to this. So you're not provided with guest virtual firmware, or I think you're not required to in that case because you're not using their virtualization infrastructure.
Not available everywhere, not available as easy as you'd like everywhere. So there are a variety of levels of this, and so it's all part of that, I think.
Yeah, and then I was brainstorming here, right? I don't have a very specific answer to the thing. I'm just saying I think it's important to go in that direction and try to figure out what can be done to make it easier. And Alec, I totally understand it's not specific enough to be actionable right away, but it's directionally important.
Catherine?
Well, I think that connecting to this discussion, we've been trying, and as Manu was saying, there are launch pads and some labs that Intel provides and other vendors that sometimes we can get our hands on bare metal machines with what we need. But it's very hard. Asking the CSPs for such is a constant ask and a constant we'll look into it. I think that and I'm talking about the CCC and for researchers, it could be that purchasing a set of specific pieces of hardware, Intel TDX machine, AMD SCV machine, H100s, that would be the solution. Because relying on the CSPs are businesses. They have their reasons for not providing it, and they have their own good reasons. I think that if the CCC has a budget, it should be used for such as well.
Intel and AMD and ARM should absolutely be giving this stuff to the membership, is my view. But yeah, we could spend money too. Sorry.
Yeah, that's for you to manage that negotiation. But I think that expecting to get that from the CSP is very hard.
So Google does offer bare metal. So if the bare metal machines are equipped with, let's say, TDX, AMD, SMPU capabilities, would that satisfy your needs, or you need something more?
Catherine, I can tell you that we're in discussions with the Google CC team, and it's not available yet. We've been asking for that for quite a long time.
Okay, we can take this offline. But my understanding is that should be coming.
Ram, you also have your hand up?
Yeah, same, whatever Catherine said, right? The same thing applies here as well for IBM. Bare metal SGX machines are available as of today. If you can always go get them today in the IBM cloud. TDX1, probably we can make that work. I can get it working with our folks and see whether we can make that available. But at a bare metal yet, as of now, we do have SGX based bare metal machines available.
And is my terminology right? You refer to that as infrastructure as a service?
Correct. Yes, infrastructure as a service, correct.
This is good. I'm happy to hear our members chipping in and saying that things are rosier than we feared. It's always nice.
So there's a couple ways that we could go about this. We could kind of leave that budget item as is and assume that would satisfy what we need to put together. Or we could try to swag out a budget. And I could see two different ways of doing this. One would be to have a physical lab. In the past, when we looked at the Linux Foundation offering some hosting for us, I think that those facilities exist. So we could kind of
hugely expensive.
Spec out the hugely expensive physical lab, and then what I'll call a virtual lab where each of the CSPs could provide access for certain infrastructure as a service capabilities. And that could either be like a bill back, or it could be freely offered, donated. I don't want to constrain us there. But those seem like the two main ways that we could do that.
I think it's a good conversation to bring to the GB, partly, if only because all I think of the companies about whom we're talking, the silicon providers and the CSPs, are members of the GB. Not to say we shouldn't have it more broadly as well, but I think we should also bring it up there, would be my suggestion.
Mike, there are some universities like University of Oregon. They do help hosting some labs and set up some infrastructure for the open source community. Maybe that's one option that can be explored.
What a great idea. Please put me in touch with some of them. I'd love to have that conversation with them.
Okay.
Thank you. Good conversation. Yes, Yash is very correct. Buying is easy, maintaining is hard. So finding a way to cost that is even if they're given to us, it's complex.
They're cheap to buy, expensive to maintain these machines.
Yep, absolutely. You're not doing anything with the rest of your time, right, Dan? You could just spend it. Sysadmin these machines?
So long as we all agree these machines are cheap to buy and you should just buy lots of them, then yeah, we'll worry about the maintenance afterwards.
They're your machines, they're Intel machines. You make them cheap. Well, anyway.
Okay, so let's see here. Anything else on here? Yeah, so this is a very small list of things that we've consolidated our budget down to. One other thought just with travel is if push comes to shove and because of deficit spending, we need to make we need to cut something. This travel budget is always a little bit awkward because it's a relatively small amount of money, so it doesn't get you around the globe for each project. It doesn't necessarily scale as we add more and more projects. And it's also always just a little bit awkward from an approval perspective because somebody always has some kind of exception, and I don't really want to build up like an HR handbook of travel policies. So I just want to float the idea that we could also just completely kill this one travel budget line at 14K. I want to get people's reaction to that, because I am also coming from the perspective of being backed by a fairly large company here.
I'm not sure where the funds came from, but as a startup, I think we took advantage of some of the travel funds to get to KubeCon. So as you want to attract maybe more researchers and more startups, that's beneficial, but maybe that came from someplace else.
That might have come from someplace else, because I think this budget here is just for project maintainers. So if you're in a project like Coconut or Open Enclave, then this budget is available to you. And it's maybe also worth noting that the SIGs, particularly the attestation SIG, there's interest in some of those participants to be able to tap that travel money. But that's where it gets to be in an exception space to manage that. All right, well, you're a regular participant of the SIG who, you're not a project maintainer. So it becomes awkward. Yash?
Yeah, so we should be asking the project maintainers if they benefited from this, like the 6,584 that we have used this year, which projects benefited, and do they plan to, do they depend on this money being there next year as well. Because if we remove the line and the project maintainers are expecting it to be there, then they might not get to travel. So if you have more details about which project used the money, we can reach out to them and say, we are planning to remove this line. Do you plan to travel next year or use this again?
I want to say this is predominantly Verizon and another project with ARM contributors. So I think it's primarily been people from ARM who have been able to take advantage of this.
Yeah.
I think it was also very.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, it's our two Vs. So one note on this though, most of these projections are stable. The one that is rapidly changing in the CCC is our portfolio is like a third bigger than it was last year. And I do expect that to be bigger next year. So this is actually one where I wouldn't look at past projections. I would keep it stable because we probably will have, I mean, I'm going to estimate a project a quarter next year at the minimum, almost, doubling again. So let's anticipate that. That's the one thing I want to make sure we do have support for.
Okay, so in order to wrap this up and get this to the board, what I am going to suggest is that if people could spend some time thinking, maybe if you could go back to previous discussions, especially for those who were around for them when we looked at spinning up lab costs in the past, and figure out what that might be for those two scenarios of one, the LF hosting machines on our behalf, or two, what it would cost in infrastructure as a service credits at a generalized CSP. And then we can figure out whether that fits into that $45,000 budget, including what people are already spending. Then we'll know, then we'll have some confidence in this budget. I don't recall off the top of my head when the board actually has to vote on budget.
We're going to start getting asked to have things in place fairly soon. We want to be discussing it in something fairly definite in a week's time, I think. So, okay. Yeah, we do need to get moving, I believe.
Okay, so this will serve as our default answer until we come up with data that suggests that it should be something different. And it seems like the main swing factor is going to be what we think we should and could facilitate for labs. Okay, we're going to skip over this plumber's talk that we are not going to have. I don't want to get into this discussion again today because we're not really prepared for it, though we do have the slides there. What I would like to do is take a quick look at what we have coming up. So this is this week, and we're not having the plumber's talk. I want to go through the OKRs that we committed to next session. So each of you who is a TAC voting member, and some of you who are not TAC voting members but are still actively participating, have picked up KRs to do. So we want to make sure that we are actually on track to finish accomplishing things by the end of the year. And then that should also feed into thinking about what it is that we want to do next year. I don't know if I have, if somebody has the doc handy for the TAC OKRs. Try to grab it real quick here myself. Oh, thank you, Yash. All right, so everybody could grab that link on their own and look through and see what they have committed to doing. Ben, put this table together at the top to help you jump down into the dock for where your area is. Maybe the easiest way to look at this is actually with the outline. So that still ends up being fairly large. So I guess what I want to get at is just starting some consideration for next year. The last 2 years, so this year and the previous year, we organized things around projects, ecosystem, and community. And so I want people to think about whether those are the same kind of categories that we want to take up next year. And I want to be a little bit earlier in the schedule to get those things planned out. Why that's meaningful, at least from my perspective, is I'm going to go to my colleagues at my company before the end of the year, because they're all in planning cycles for what they're going to spend for 2025. And I want to say these are the things that Intel wants to accomplish through the CCC, or these are the things that the CCC wants to accomplish and needs Intel's help. And so I want to, as best as possible, intercept my company's planning cycle. That might be advantageous to some of you out there as well. So I want to get that taken care of before we hit the end of the year. Thanks for the thumbs up out there, Catherine. Okay, and with that, we could talk about any of this if people had questions or wanted to revisit and help get some refresh from the community on what it was that they were committed to do. Does anybody have questions along those lines? Okay, seems like everybody knows what they wanted to accomplish, and we can have a good update on that. So I'll plan to just kind of go down this list next meeting. It looks like, yeah.
So I was just going to say, next meeting I won't be here. None of these apply to me, but I'll be in Japan, so unable to participate, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, enjoy your time in Japan.
OSS Japan, we have 2 talks, if anyone else is going to be there. One with Partisia, who's a fairly recent member, and one that I'm doing. Well, one's a Birds of a Feather, which I'm looking forward to, Partisia.
Wish I could be. It'd be a good trip.
Hey, Dan, I'm thinking on the list before that we're not going to be speaking just to the objectives that you have listed there, but proposed new objectives for 2025.
We could do it either way. My thought was to go through and make sure that we have time to see how we're doing for 2024, and then use that as food for thought to get into 2025.
Got it. So this one will be specifically looking on how we're doing with objectives that I've identified in the past.
Yeah. So it looks like Halloween. So Halloween, we'll go through that and then start the discussion on 2025. And then hopefully in the meeting before Thanksgiving, be able to, I don't think we need specific KRs at that time, but we should at least have a good idea of what shape 2025 will take with it. And our little table here cuts off, but I think we will only have maybe one meeting after that. So that's why we really need to finish up before Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
US Thanksgiving, of course. I believe the Canadians have already enjoyed theirs.
Hopefully they left a few turkeys for those of us in the continental US.
Well, I know they're always trying to run in front of my car where I live, so seems like they can't wait to get on the table. Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda for today. Any parting words from anybody? Any questions?
Yes. I updated the slides this morning. So I was surprised to see my update not here. And I think it's probably because I updated the last occasion slides because of incompetence on my part and nobody else's. So apologies for that. Just to say that some of you may remember a fun set of discussions around the business use cases for, attestation AVS business models document, which went very technical very quickly and was fantastic. However, it stopped doing the thing that it needs to do, which I tried to write it for to start with, which is talk about business models. So I have basically rewritten it, tried to take as much technical stuff out as possible, and there's a new version available. Oh, there it is. Where did you find that?
I don't know if this is new or not. These are the slides that we had to introduce the topic before.
Okay, this is the new version. This is the slides I just updated this morning, so I am incompetent. There we go. So please do have a look at that. Already some people have done so. I think it's really important that we discuss this, whether it's you or your colleagues in different parts of the organization. I don't mind, but let's get it discussed. Let's get some conversation going. And I've tried to make it much more accessible. It was just not. So hopefully it's better now, so people can read it and do something better with it. It read like a chapter from my book. It's just in nobody's best interest, frankly. So do have a look. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Great. Yeah, so I think we are good for today then. Thanks everybody for joining and for all the good discussion. And please take some of that to the mail list, and we'll talk again in about 2 weeks.
Ram, the email is there. If you have a problem, find Rian or me and we'll help you with it. Thanks. Have a good one, folks. Bye.
Thanks,
Dan.
Bye.